Hello, everyone. As you have noticed, we have a different schedule these days. We decided to split the 1 hour meeting bi-weekly meeting of SIG scheduling into two meetings, a 30-minute meeting every week. I hope this schedule works better for everyone around the world, since we have so many contributors who are located in various countries. We had a hard time finding one time that would work well for everybody. So we had to do this. I hope at least one of these two meetings, like one is at 10 a.m. for Pacific time, and one is 5 p.m. Pacific time. So I hope at least one of these two works for everyone. If none of them still works for some of you and you prefer to attend any of these meetings, please let us know. We try to accommodate as much as possible. For today's meeting, I didn't send an agenda before the meeting, but I have a few items that I would like to talk about, and then if you have any items, I will let you speak. As usual, we decided to go over 111 items that we have. Some of them, some of them are handled by Klaus, which I guess Klaus must not be present today because it's a horrible time in China. So yeah, he's not here. So I'm gonna go over some of the other items, and then if you have anything to talk about, please go ahead. So one of the most important items that we would like to do in 111 is to promote priority and preemption to beta. So far, this is on track. There is some work that Klaus is working on to remove this the scheduling logic of daemon set controller and moving it to the default scheduler. That work is being followed up, and it's on track as far as I can tell. Hopefully we will have the changes in soon. There is some work to improve scalability of preemption. We haven't seen a whole lot of issues so far. I have been working on some benchmarking, and along the way I found ways to improve performance of affinity and anti-affinity predicates. I have sent a PR that significantly improves performance of affinity and anti-affinity. We've seen like over 20 times performance improvement in larger clusters. Larger clusters were the ones that we were most concerned about. And I'm glad that we have found a solution for that. So hopefully this helps with the scalability of priority and preemption as well. One of the most important blockers for priority and preemption promotion to beta was finding customers who are willing to try it with realistic workloads as opposed to just test environments. I'm glad that we have also found a couple of customers inside and outside of Google who are willing to try this feature, and we are going to probably start rolling this out in some of their select clusters as early as next week.
Regarding priority or preemption, I think like I said it before also, like we are also very interested in trying that in our Red Hat clusters. Also like what you said, those things like we also agree with them. But in addition to that, one of the like other biggest blockers for us using priority and preemption is not having some sort of policy control and admission control that we have been looking for, having whitelisting or anything allowed a list of priority classes per namespaces and then controlling them via admission plugin.
Right. So there is an effort, I think you may be aware of, there is an effort.
Yeah.
Yasin has been working on, actually he's present today here. He can talk a little bit more about that and give us a little bit more update on that effort. There is that effort that is trying to create a sort of like holistic policy system um, for restricting properties of pods that affect the scheduling of them. One of these properties is priority, and his policy tries to address defaulting of the priority for pods in a particular namespace. That's what I am trying to actually tell them to do. Their proposal initially was not necessarily targeting a particular namespace, but I think it'll be better to focus on a particular namespace for setting these policies and basically making the granularity of these policies a namespace. There are a number of other things that they are working on, like, for example, what kind of scheduler you can use or stuff like that. There are a list, like what tolerations you can specify
Yeah.
for the positives and all.
Yeah, I mean, I think yesterday or maybe day before, I also gave some feedback. We might have some simplistic policy, maybe not having so many like RBAC and so many other things. Maybe we might not, so that management of that policy is easier. I'm not sure like if there is any some after that there is another PR or anywhere like I saw like now we have been trying to do that via KEP, right? But I'm not sure like how to be where to look for that.
So you're not sure where to look for PRs that implement this, or
No, I mean, I saw the last comment was now instead of doing that via proposal, we are trying to do that via KEP, right?
I actually didn't see these recent comments on that PR.
Yeah,
Actually, we were trying to do it by using KAP, but from talking with Tim O'Clair from SIG we figured out that we might need to just go with the scheduling policy design proposal, and after that extract all the standards that we've put there and all the choices that we've made into a KAP. So we'll go just with the design proposal and then extract what we've done and generalize it for the whole policy API group.
yeah,
Uh, and the thing, we're dropping also binding policies using airbag. We're fallbacking on using namespace selectors and listing of namespaces. I think there's some some security concerns when you use role bindings and cluster role bindings to bind policies. It opens up the usage of the policy to all pods using a certain service account. So it's not really super safe. And instead maybe just use namespaces and namespaces selectors and maybe even pod selectors.
Yeah, I think namespace selector or generally restricting or making the granularity of policy and namespace is more aligned with other policies that we have. Not all of the policies in Kubernetes, but with some of the other policies that we have in Kubernetes. Like particularly, for example, Coda, we have it for namespace. So we should possibly align these two together. And I feel in most scenarios, this works better for users and covers most of the use cases if we make the granularity a namespace.
Also, we've been working with Erica on how to compose policies. The thing is that it's a bit tricky, and we've basically we'll be using two ways to compose policies. Binding mode which is called any. This binding mode is basically we take any policy that validates or that satisfies the constraints, and there is the binding mode which is called all. This binding mode is basically we must satisfy each policy, and if there's a conflict, basically there's two types of conflicts: structural conflicts. These we can detect them at validation time when we create the scheduling policy. basically put in something in required, but also put in the exact same thing on deny. This we can detect it on the validation time, and there's semantic conflicts. These can be detected at compute time, and basically we can't make choice for the cluster admin since he created the conflict. So we just surface an event to say, hey, there's a conflict in here in your policy.
Right, that would be fine in my opinion. It's generally very, very tough to find all these conflicts and ensure that there is not going to be anything. So I think just letting the admin know seems reasonable to me.
Yeah, especially when you're using affinity and operators like in, not in, and things like that.
Exactly. All right, sounds good. So in order to get a better sense of when you think you're gonna be closer, I haven't followed up that or
the,
much recently, but when do you think you can have a kind of closer to final design doc?
Actually, the design doc, I've been working on this the whole week. We have a generic part that says this is how we structured, this is how we handle conflicts, and there's a second part that specifies everything for the scheduling policy. I think that it will be ready to review for tomorrow, but also there's another stream. It's basically how we implement policies, and Erica, which is from the working group policy, sent me an effort that have been done on their side, which is the container policy interface. So it's basically the idea to surface a true API and not just fall back on admission controller to implement policies, but like to have a real API, a real contract that says, hey, that's how we get policies, that's how we enforce them, that's how we update them. So I think that the implementation of scheduling policy will be tied to how fast we can get the container policy out if it's still a thing.
So maybe I missed it a little bit in the middle of conversation. So where exactly this container policy or container API comes into the picture? Why can't we just read the policies from the API server?
The thing is that we want to integrate with things like OPA and stuff like that.
Oh, I see.
And we maybe wanted to manage the Kubernetes policies and things like that. So we want to have something that is pluggable, that computes the policies and enforce them.
I see. Okay, this sounds good to me. What scares me a bit is that it might make a much longer than anticipated time to have a first version or first working version. What do you think?
I think that surfacing the API might not take so long since we have the working group policy on board. We can have a default implementation on the Kubernetes side for policies. Basically, it will be just extracting the implementation of network policies, pod security policies, and the implementation of scheduling policy. And this will be an implementation like for CNI, we have Kubernetes. We can have our own implementation of container policy interface. So this can give us some freedom to get the implementation out first, and not to wait much to have someone that implements this and does the work.
So okay. So basically, what is our estimate for having at least the first version? Is it going to be 1.11?
I don't think that we can have it for the next release.
Okay.
I'm not sure that we can have it. I think that we can go with what we have in admission controller as alpha, but I'm not in favor to promote it to beta or something like that, since we're conveying implementation using annotation and things like that.
Yeah, I'm not talking about promoting it to beta at the moment, but basically even the alpha version, one working version, could be the very first version. When do you think it's going to be available? 1.12?
I think 1.12 would be a good target to have something that is tested and ready to be launched as alpha.
Okay. Avesh, what's your thoughts on that? Do you think that it's not going to be used, priority and preemption is not going to be
Yeah,
useful for you until we land this
yeah.
feature?
Actually, yeah, that's the only thing. Otherwise, like for like holistic policy, it might be okay for to have it in 1.12, but only just for priority prevention feature, not having any control around priority classes in multi-tenant environment.
Hmm.
It's going to be a very big blocker for us.
I see. So one of the issues, as you are aware, in Kubernetes is that we cannot introduce an API that works in one version and we just pull it back. When we introduce something, it's going to stay for a while and it goes through like our regular various steps
Yep.
of deprecation. So it's going to be tough really to introduce something temporarily that can work for you in 1.11 and then we deprecate it in 1.12. And I think there is going to be a lot of objections even if we decide to do that.
The thing is that when you use admission controller, you introduce an implicit API. Even if we do not have a strict API, people will be using these things. So it creates a dependency and might break clusters if we upgrade from a release to another, if we pull back, for example, any temporary implementation.
Right. That is true. I wonder if, Avesh, I wonder if you guys can have something maybe on your side to cover you temporarily and not having it upstreamed. I don't really know the logistics on your side, but it seems to be a little tough to introduce anything in the upstream API.
Also, from what we've talked with SIG architecture, the way to go for them is also maybe just wait a bit and surface an API that has been think about and that will stay for a long time.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Of course, if you want to think long term, we should have something that works better in the longer future, as opposed to having some temporary fix that we have to adapt a couple of releases. So definitely, this is going to be a more proper approach, no doubt about it. But I'm just trying to see what we can do to address the problems that Avesh is concerned about. Generally, Red Hat is concerned
Yeah,
about.
I agree like with long-term approach, but I mean that's the only thing. Maybe like I'll also discuss with other folks internally. Let's see, and like once we have some update about this design proposal, we can see like if there is any accommodation we can make in 1.11. But like maybe once we see the update, we might have better picture how to go about that.
Yeah, that sounds good. Okay, let us know. So among the other items that I would like to give an update, one is about equivalence cache. As you guys might know or have seen, there has been a few attempts in enabling equivalence cache or making it more usable. And most recent one failed again due to a race condition that it introduces. If I don't want to give all the details here, but if you're interested, I can send a link to this race condition to you. So anyway, this introduces a race condition, and we have a hard time finding a proper fix for this because if we want to introduce synchronization to address the race condition, it looks like we are going to have a very big lock around each scheduling cycle, which seems a little bit of a performance killer to me. We haven't really tried it, but my experience says that it most probably is going to cause a lot of performance drop. So anyway, if you're interested or if you have expertise or interest in solving this problem, please reach us and take a look at the problem. Another couple of items like graduating taints by tainting node by condition and evicting pods from nodes based on taints, and all of that is done by Klaus. Next week when he's present, he's going to give an update on those. He's also working on gang scheduling. He's going to give an update on that as well. There is one item that I should be working on, and I have delayed it, and I actually have started working on it, and I've written quite a few pages for the document, and that's scheduling framework. I haven't finished the document yet, and I take full responsibility of not finishing it. I wanted to really finish it by the end of March, which didn't happen. I'm really hoping that I can at least do it by the end of April. So hopefully I will finish it and send it out. The reason that it's delayed is partly because I have been very busy, and another reason is that I try to cover a bunch of things, including extensibility of scheduler, as well as trying to at least see that this new architecture is flexible enough to address the projects that we have in our roadmap. One of them, for example, gang scheduling. Gang scheduling does not quite fit well in our current scheduler architecture. I'm trying to see if I can really fit it into the new architecture that we're designing. And there are a number of other items that we would like to address there. One is dynamic binding of resources. These are resources which are cluster level resources as opposed to node level resources. This model, actually the new model that I have worked on, works pretty well for dynamic binding. But as I said, there are other items that I'm working on, and hopefully I can finish it and send it out soon. So these are most of the items that I have on the 111 list that I wanted to talk about. I don't see any major issues that is causing any major problems in the scheduler, or I don't see any major blockers. But if you have any items that you would like to talk about, please go ahead.
Bobby,
Yes.
thanks for the update. I just have one question about the schedule framework.
Sure.
So what was that? Can you go more details? Because I thought there was already a schedule extender of things. And what's the issue number? Like, is there, if there's any?
So for scheduling framework, you mean the issue number for scheduling framework?
Yeah.
I don't think there is any, actually there is no issue for that. And I've been working on a document that I will send out to the community soon. I don't think there is any issue, but the particular problem with the scheduler extender are two things. One is the fact that scheduler extender supports very few extension points, basically, or our current architecture exposes very few extension points. These are, for example, the filter extension points, prioritize extension points, and now more recently, bind and preemption. So what we would like to achieve in the new architecture is that we would like to expose many more extension points, first of all, like, for example, before filtering, after filtering, during filtering, and all of that. The goal is that we can hopefully convert all of our priority and predicate functions into plugins for this new architecture. That's one of the goals. The second goal is that our current extension mechanism is only via a webhook. Webhook is good if you want to run a separate process alongside the scheduler, but it's not that great in terms of performance. So, for example, if we wanted to convert all of today's predicate and priority functions into webhooks, scheduler's performance would have dropped dramatically. So what we are trying to achieve in the new architecture is to introduce in-process plugins. Basically, these are sort of like a library that are built with the scheduler, but they always talk with the scheduler via a very well-defined interface. And users can hopefully in the future have some of these custom plugins. They could be in process or out of process plugins that they can easily maintain alongside with the scheduler, with the main scheduler or scheduling framework that we're building. This will reduce the burden of maintaining customized schedulers. So hopefully users who need customization of the scheduler can achieve those with reasonable performance.
What's the advantages of like in-process plugin versus let's say like a RPC based plugin?
So the main advantage is a much faster communication with the scheduling framework and the ability to use the scheduler cache. So when you build a separate process over RPC, you probably need to have your own scheduler or your own cache of whatever, or if you choose not to use a cache, of course, performance is going to be lower. But even if you have all the performance optimization in place for an out-of-process plugin, still the communication overhead over network or various layers of software, like for example, going over HTTP, sending a request out, marshalling everything to JSON or whatever, and then getting the result back again over network and HTTP interface, and unmarshalling everything back to usable data structures is going to take a lot of time. Right? So we are trying to avoid all these layers by introducing in-process plugins.
Sorry, just one more question about like why schedule framework like doesn't fit all the use cases. Like let's take Gantt scheduling as an example. Like how does it not fit, and what could you just list one problem?
One of the issues, for example, that Gantt scheduling has is that we need to, in Gantt scheduling, we want to schedule, let's say, a certain number of pods all together, right? And if we cannot schedule, let's say, 20 pods, we don't want to schedule any of them, right? So today's scheduler architecture is that it schedules one pod at a time. So a model like Gantt scheduling does not fit in today's architecture. In the scheduling framework, I followed pretty much the same architecture, but I exposed a lot more scheduling, a lot more extension points, basically in my document. But the basics of scheduling flow is still the same. We need to change that a little bit in order to make Gantt scheduling possible. This is not the only requirement of Gantt scheduling. If you combine it, for example, with preemption, things become a little bit more complex. So let's say that a number of pods in your Gantt require preemption. If 5 of them require preemption, but even after preempting or assuming that you would preempt these pods, you still realize that you cannot schedule all those 20 pods that you require to schedule for Gantt scheduling. You should not preempt anything. So basically, the preemption should be assumed during the process, but should be actually done until you are sure that you can schedule all those 20 pods. So there are some of these complications when Gantt scheduling is considered. I would like to cover those in the new architecture if possible. I'm not 100% sure that we can cover it nicely. If I haven't given up though yet, so I will see.
Fantastic.
Bobby, have you made your talk public somewhere?
No, I haven't actually. I haven't yet because I feel it's not quite ready. I would like to finish some of the details, and then hopefully in the next 1 or 2 weeks I will, hopefully most probably before QCon, which is basically end of this month. I will send it out.
And I think I assume that this framework we are working on, obviously it's like long-term plan, right? I don't know, like I don't know, not even like 1.12 or 1.13, or I don't know what is the plan earlier.
No, actually, I think um, depending on how many people we can get to work on it, we might actually be able to have an early version as soon as 1.12. But that's
When you
very
say
optimistic thinking.
when you say
Maybe
early version,
1.13.
when you say early version, you mean early version of design doc or early version or implementation?
An early version of implementation.
Yeah, but that seems like
So yes, so the one of what I'm trying to do is to design it in a way that we can use as much code as possible from the current scheduler.
uh,
So that way, hopefully, we will have a little bit higher velocity in building the first version.
yeah, I mean, I would suggest like definitely first task is to have a consensus on the design doc, obviously,
Absolutely.
and then definitely like it would be good to split that like so that more people can work, and obviously like we would love be I mean glad to help Ravi or myself from our side.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely.
Actually, I think it's also important to have like a working prototype first, so that we can verify like it fits all our use cases, right? That would, it doesn't have to be everyone agree on the same thing and then we move forward. Like we can have majority agree on something, then we start prototyping and then we finalize it. Actually, this fits the use cases for our client before we finalize the, you know.
Actually, in my understanding, something I mean, at least from my understanding, this. Having this framework means some larger effort. If it would be so easy to have a point of concept or to have a working prototype, then maybe like either I am wrong that it's not a large effort or something like that. That's why like I was wondering to have consensus or design doc, that itself might be a huge task.
Yeah.
And then have, I mean, if it was not a use task, then I agree like we might have had some sort of point of concept or some working prototype, but I'm not sure.
Yeah, yeah, you're right. As I said, I generally tend to underestimate the amount of time that it takes to implement stuff, and it's probably the case here as well. When I say 1.12, it's really wishful thinking, I guess, and it's too optimistic. But I really hope that after we finalize the design, I really hope that we can have a
Yeah,
version within a couple of releases.
yeah.
All right, we are already over time. If anybody else has any questions, please go ahead.
I mean, just one thing I wanted to say, like, if there are, I haven't seen many items like where you are looking for help or anything, but like if there are some specific items people need help, like obviously, like as I said again, like Ravi and myself, like we would be happy to help. And like I think one thing like with that thing we have been looking in this thing like tracing like upstream issues.
Mhm.
Still, if that's the case, definitely like we can help.
So more recently, the number of PRs and the number of items that need review have dropped a little bit. So I've been able to manage some of them. But soon, I think we are going to see again some rise in the number of items that we are going to work on. And this is like the calmness after code freeze still, I guess. But there's going to be some new items coming in.
Yeah.
So yeah, definitely I will ask you guys to help. Thank you for
And, and and just one thing I would like to point out specifically, there is one very large refactoring PR by Steven Szymanski where he is adding secure authentication authorized options to a scheduler, and I've been reviewing that. So only just one part is there that I need to review. Once I am done that, like maybe you can have a look. So only just one part is remaining that I haven't reviewed, and once I am done, like we because I think that's like one of the like major refactor like he is
right.
doing.
Yeah, I've seen that PR. It's a pretty large PR. Sure, I will take a look as well. Thank you for
Yeah,
letting.
also like I have provided like most of the feedback. Just like one last file is remaining, that actual the server file. Uh,
Sounds good. All right, thanks. All right. Anything else?
Just one more question: is the Klaus Ma is still working on the GAN scheduling design proposal? Because I like we are interested. I'm trying to reach him out, but couldn't like.
Yes, he is. He's working on that. Since he's located in Beijing, he cannot attend our 10 a.m. meetings or 10 a.m. Pacific time meetings. So he's gonna be present next week in our SIG meeting. He's gonna provide more updates on Yang scheduling.
That sounds fantastic. Thank you.
Sure. And anything else? Okay, thank you, everybody. See some of you guys next week, maybe. And otherwise, see you in 2 weeks. Bye.
Yeah, thank you.